Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Is Daniel Haqiqatjou an Orthodox Sunni Traditionalist Muslim? So, before I give my view on Daniel or my criticisms of Daniel, firstly, I want to, note the good things about him. Because, obviously, uh, it's not really a black and white issue. And there's obviously good aspects and bad aspects to practically everyone, Even Abu Jahl, for example, had some good traits, even though obviously his bad traits vastly outweigh his good, and obviously good traits. And obviously, I'm not comparing Daniel to Abu Jahl. Daniel is a Muslim at the end of the day. Anyways, the good things I find about Daniel is that he criticizes what he likes to call, the simp imams. And I think that a lot of his criticisms of the simp imams are valid, and I support many of his criticisms against Yaqeen, Omar Suleiman specifically, Yasir Qadi as well, and just the issue and the impact of modernism on Muslim society in the US specifically, but in the globe in general. Okay? I think that many of his criticisms are very valid, and I think that he is the one who is more in the right when it comes to his sort of fight against the simp imams, as he likes to call them. I think also that he kind of steers Muslims more into accepting hudud, and he offers explanations for these, what modern people might view as being harsh punishments. And so I think he may help Muslims feel more secure about this kind of thing, perhaps. I don't really know how good he is at convincing liberal Muslims who already have their beliefs about liberalism, or liberals in general, even though they're non-Muslims, about the validity of hudud. I think it's very hard to measure. So I won't say he's very convincing, and I won't say he's not convincing, because I don't really have any information on that, and it's a hard thing to measure. So, I don't know, really. Obviously, some of his explanations I agree with more than others, but I think when it comes to explaining these sort of things, the disagreements aren't really that important, because he's just offering, really possible wisdoms behind these things. And, debating these things really aren't, in my view, that important, like the potential wisdoms behind a ruling, At the end of the day, we don't really know, we won't really ever appreciate truly or understand truly the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his rulings, because his wisdom is obviously way beyond our comprehension. There's just going to be things that we don't understand. And yeah. In any case, with that all being said, Daniel's good traits. I think he does something which I view as being negative. And I think that Daniel considers stuff like hudud and what I like to call the Muslim identity to be more important than Tawheed itself. And I don't think that Daniel is being intentionally malicious with doing this. I think that Daniel just Uh, he just doesn't know, really. And I think it just, I think he just genuinely doesn't really know. And he does, I think, genuinely believe that he's a very traditionalist Muslim. I think that Daniel is in reality a modernist. Now, I think that's a pretty big claim to make about Daniel. And I think that a lot of people will be surprised that I make this assertion, that Daniel Haqiqatjou is a modernist. Why do I say this? Daniel has this idea of there being inter-Sunni unity, of there being unity between the Ash'ara, who are basically Jahmiyyah really, and the Salafis. Now, I don't know who's listening to this. I don't know if you're a Salafi or an Ash'ari or whatever. Okay? But whichever, or, non-affiliated. But whichever side you go onto, you have to accept that traditional Muslim scholars, or traditional scholars, okay, considered, or traditional scholars within the Islamic tradition, let's say, or the Muslim tradition, considered the issue of creed to be a more important issue than sort of like the bad morals of like zina and feminism and stuff like that Daniel is warning up against. Now, I'm not saying that feminism can't have implication on Aqidah, and I'm not saying that liberalism can't have implications on Aqidah. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. However, what I am saying is that the idea that we have to put these creedal matters aside, if Allah is above the throne, if Allah can speak or if Allah speaks, if the Quran is created or uncreated, all these creedal issues. And Ash'ara, by the way, say that the Quran is created. And by Quran, I obviously mean Quran, from beginning from Al-Fatiha and from Al-Nas. And whoever doesn't know what I'm talking about, please, search up the concept of Kalam al-Nafsi and Kalam Nafsi, and you will see that the Ash'ara believe that the Quran is created. Al-Kalam al-Nafsi. Anyways. To put all these creedal matters aside, for the sake of sort of unifying against the liberals and protecting Muslim values like family, chastity, sort of manliness and, femininity, like protecting the femininity of women, protecting the manliness of men, fighting against homosexuality. All of these things are less important than creedal matters. Why? So let's say you have two people. And even when, and I understand that liberalism can sometimes have a person's rabt aqidah. Okay, I understand that. But let's say you have two people. One person says that Allah is not above the throne, which the Salaf, considered to be a very clear matter, and a matter of kufr and Islam. And even the Ash'ari believe that if you say that Allah is above the throne, they would say you are a mujassim. So, like, whatever side of the debate, they consider this to be the most important issue. Okay? Or someone would say, someone says that Allah cannot speak, wal-'iyadhu billah, like the Ash'ari do and the Jahmiyyah do. Okay, and that the Quran is created. And compare this with someone who, for example, says that homosexuality is permissible. Or let's say, for example, someone says that astaghfirullah al-azim, that we shouldn't apply the had today because it's not applicable, whatever, for whatever reason. Or you have a less extreme modernist who says something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something liberal that when these liberal imams or whatever, they go and they walk with these like homosexuals and they walk hand in hand with them and whatever, and they say that, we accept you and whatever. Someone saying that homosexuality is permissible is less severe. It's kufr. It can very easily take you out of the fold of Islam. Very, very easily take you out of the fold of Islam because of the very clear texts on how it's not permissible. Multiple texts, or passages or excerpts or whatever you want to say. But at the same time, saying that Allah is not above the throne can also very easily take you out of the fold of Islam. And saying that Allah is not above the throne is more of a kufr thing than saying homosexuality is permissible. Or saying that, women don't have to conform to gender roles and they can join the army, for example. And they can be generals and they can be military leaders. Okay. This is obviously not in adherence to the Islamic paradigm of gender roles, but it seemed to me that Daniel would take a harsher stance against someone who says that, for example, that there's no issue, women can join the military, women don't have to listen to their husbands, women are equal to men in the sense that they have the same amount of social power. That should be the case, And this is obviously a completely incorrect and wrong thing to say, but it's less wrong than someone who says that Allah is not above the throne. Or if Daniel is an Ash'ari, for example, they say, and I hope he's not, it would be according to the Ash'ari Jahmi perspective. It would be where they say that, I can't even bring myself to say it, honestly. But, I can, but it's just, I don't like saying it. That, what their beliefs are, that they say that Allah is not above the throne. وَالْعِيَاذَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا الْكَلَامِ. Yeah, like according to them, like someone who says that Allah is above the throne is a mujassim kafir. And so Daniel isn't really aligning himself with the Jahmi tradition or the Ash'ari tradition, to be politically correct, nor is he aligning himself with the Sunni Salafi tradition. Really, in reality, he's aligning himself with the modern tradition that considers these core issues of creed to be secondary. And so what I think the issue is that in the minds of his followers, he's sort of making the issue of tawheed and creed, when he says stuff that, there should be inter-Sunni unity between Ash'ara and the Salafis. Though the last time I've seen him make the statement was a while back, I don't think he still says stuff like that. But anyways, when he focuses on these issues of hudud, being the most important issues of aqeedah, or the most important issues of where he will have wala and bara over, and these values, he makes it seem, as important as those values are, and I agree that they're very important, but he makes it seem to his Muslim fan base that these are the most important values. And so I think there's a genuine harm being done on the Muslim community when they measure the tradition or they measure the aqeedah of an individual by just their by if they're homophobic and if they have a beard and if they believe that murtaddin should be executed, And I think that Daniel, I see him, I think sometimes he shares people who are Ash'ari or Deobandi or whatever. And he can act as a pipeline essentially to these innovators who go on to ruin the Tawheed, or rather corrupt the Tawheed, or demolish the Tawheed, or whatever you want to call it, of these young men, of his followers, okay? And I'm really sorry to say, but in some cases, or even in many cases, it may very well be the case that a Muslim lady or a Muslim man who is influenced by feminist ideas would be better than a Muslim man or a Muslim female who is influenced by Ash'ari ideas or Jahmi ideas, okay? And just as a piece of advice towards Daniel, because I do think that he has done good work in the past, and I applaud him for the good that he has done, is just that he needs to learn the beliefs of a Salaf al-Salih with regards to innovation, with regards to Aqidah, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how harsh they were against the Jahmiyyah, and subsequently how harsh the Sunni scholars were against the followers of the Jahmiyyah, the Ash'ara. Okay? And that the same wala and bara that you practice towards the simp, like the same bara you have towards the simp imams, you should have the same bara towards people like what's his name, Asrar Rashid. Okay, I think that's his name. I forgot. Like he argues for Mawlid and whatever. He's like a Ash'ari scholar. Okay. You should have the same, bara towards him, and the scholars who share similar beliefs to him. Okay. I think that Daniel basically just sees that he sees the new innovations sort of feminism, the new innovation sort of liberal, values kind of, even though, they have their roots in history. But, some of the stuff I think there's new manifestations, and he doesn't really have an issue with, even though it sounds kind of like an oxymoron, but the older innovations or the old innovations. The old innovations are completely accepted by Daniel, even though they're, more of a danger in some cases, or I think it actually in more than just some, but let's say in some cases, okay? Because they act as the foundation for these new innovations. They act as the foundation, the corrupt reading for the corrupt reading of the text of the liberals and the feminists. And he doesn't understand that a lot of these new liberals follow similar principles to the Jahmiyyah in their reading, and that they adopt a philosophy, funny enough, also by the West, the same way the Jahmiyyah did, and they read the text through the specific philosophy, okay? Instead of reading the text through the understanding of a Salaf al-Salih, through the understanding of the Sahaba, Radwanullah alayhim, and through the zahir, the apparent meanings of the text, through the meanings that an Arab would understand if he heard those texts sort of for the first time. The meanings that are most obvious and apparent to him. Okay? That's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you very much for listening. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.